This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 17th of June 2020 and I am 2J.
I am Tom.
And I am JM. Let's get to the day's headlines. In the Daily Nation, Kenya on brink of world power seat. In the Standard, laundry or watchdog.
Yes.
And in the Star, 92 million shilling tenders that could sink Anne Waiguru. So let's begin with the Standard.
Yes.
The Standard, laundry or watchdog. Now, this is with regard to what happened yesterday at Senate. Now, Ken Lusaka, Speaker of the Senate, set up an 11-member committee that was proposed by the Senate Majority Whip, Faria Ali. And this Senate committee is meant to decide as to whether the impeachment motion of Anne Waiguru should either continue or not continue.
Yeah.
And the Standard is telling us that, is asking us whether it is a watchdog or is it a sanitizing machine that is out to clean her out.
Ah, that's the laundry.
That's the laundry.
Okay.
Now, see, what happened yesterday, guys, I rarely do this, but I have to. I'd like to revise my position on whether the impeachment of Anne Waiguru will continue or not continue.
Say that again.
Yeah.
I would like to revise my position
All right.
as to whether the impeachment motion will succeed or not. I had said that Waiguru has no chance and Agos is cooked.
Yes.
But if you saw how the Senate members yesterday voted, all the way from the majority leader to Kanu, the Kanu chairman, then you can see where this is going. And you see, the reason this will happen is because of this. I don't think that even if Anne Waiguru is guilty of the charges she's been accused of, she will be sacrificed. And that is because nobody wants to be seen to be close to William Ruto's position of impeaching her. Whatever it is Waiguru has done, for as long as it doesn't look like it is Ruto's position, that will be the position of that would be the reason why she'll
So she will be saved on account of wanting to defeat whatever position William Ruto holds.
Absolutely.
Okay, and to ensure that he doesn't have any victory.
Yes.
All right. Okay. But speaking on accusations, I
Yes.
think this is kind of what the Star gets into. 92 million shilling tenders that could sink Anne Waiguru. So they talk about these procurement irregularities that were found in the county of Kirinyaga. And they talk about the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority, the PPRA, that released this report talking about how there's lots of these irregularities. The upgrading of a market that took place, top of the range Toyota cars for her convoy, and some 50 million shillings that was used for the upgrading of a hospital management system. And so they say this is what was relied on by the MCAs when they did their impeachment motion. But more importantly, that the PPRA might just bypass, this impeachment motion and just take it straight to the EACC. And I think that's quite interesting. However, I do want to question if this story is a bit old, because if this is what the MCAs were relying on to impeach her, then this story on the 17th of January is a bit dry. I think we knew all of this. But then again, as 2M is now saying, maybe this doesn't matter after all, because there's a bigger, badder wolf that people are, they have their eyes on.
Absolutely. Good way to put it, TJ. So we have a 3-part criteria that we use to assess the headlines. Are they topical, speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, and thoughtful or just plain lazy? What do we think of the Standard and the Star?
I love Standard.
I like the Standard.
I think we park the Standard. Let's toss
the Star.
Toss the Star.
Yes, tabloid and long.
Yes. And in the Daily Nation, moving on to other news now. This is about the Security Council vote. And so Kenya on brink of world power seat. Today, member states of the United Nations will vote in a new permanent members to the UN Security Council, who are supposed to serve a 2-year term beginning January 2021. Kenya, we are told, is banking on repeated endorsements by the African Union. The vote is scheduled for 4 p.m. Nairobi time, according to the Daily Nation. And it'll be the first virtual secret ballot election, apparently. But Kenya also faces a stubborn competitor, that is Djibouti, whom it has beaten 3 times at the African Union endorsement vote last year, but which continues to stick in the race, challenging the validity of those AU elections to endorse Kenya. And finally, to win the seat, we're also told a country must garner at least 2/3 of the eligible UN member states' votes. So I think Kenya stands a good chance.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And I do hope that we win.
What's Djibouti's problem?
That's the thing. I'm sniffing a lot of mischief in this story, because when we talk about that vote, Djibouti didn't lose by like a slim margin that would, give them a reason to complain. They lost 37-13 in Kenya's favor. So I'm smelling a lot of mischief. And let's not forget, in Djibouti, they're the house to lots of military hubs. We have AFRICOM, which is the American-African conglomerate where they have their military bases. I think Italy are housed there as well, maybe Turkey. And so I think there's a lot of suspicious stuff going on. But one interesting thing that I found out is that in the past, 2016 to 2017, the Netherlands and Italy actually shared a seat. So maybe if Kenya is feeling philanthropic.
Yeah, but I wonder what interest is this Djibouti wants to really preserve. I mean, their landmass is not as big. They can actually fit in Nairobi National Park. I think we have much more to protect. Anyway.
And we have proven that we do, we have an interest in protecting international peace and security.
I think it's an SMS shortman syndrome.
Goodness. So all the best to Kenya. I think we toss
Kenya on brink.
Yes. We toss that one as well.
Yes.
And so we have a winning headline from the Standard. And on to the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. We have a 3-part criteria that we use to assess the cartoons. Are they humorous or dry, satirical, pessimistic, and effective, or just plain lazy? Let me begin with the Nation. So here we have a cartoon depicting a man who's milking a cow, representing the COVID-19 tests. He seems to be whistling or singing a song. The cow has a certificate plastered on it that is negative, and it's presented to and other, and it's signed as well. And so the cartoon portrays how the use of COVID testing is being milked for profits. The businesses have been asked to do COVID tests regularly, and as the economy begins to open up again, there's probably going to be a system that's going to be introduced for giving you a tick on whether you are COVID-19 checked or not. I think a certificate, giving it a certificate
title
is a bit too much, because we don't have a vaccine yet.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this it's only a temporary kind of measure, but they should probably call it a receipt to say that the last time I got checked was the 15th of June, and maybe I should get checked again. But a certificate, it gives you the impression that that you're COVID-19 free and you will never get it.
I mean, 2M got the test on the 15th. What's to say he didn't catch it on the 16th?
Yes,
absolutely. That's the whole point.
You see, it's like, look, it's this thing, the yellow fever certificate. The reason you actually get the certificate is because you've been vaccinated. And there's a surety that you're not going to contract it because you've been vaccinated. And therefore, you can produce it as proof. I have been vaccinated and I will not contract yellow fever. Now, what is to say, if you get this COVID certificate because you've been tested today, the next hour you can be somewhere in
literally
or
the next hour
pandering with the people, and you just contract this thing. So
however, I understand the logic of what the government is doing. If there were no measures, as flimsy as some of them may appear to be, we would just leave the masses to their own devices. So I think sometimes the government does have to put these arbitrary rules in place just to give people, lines within to operate.
And to give them some sort of confidence.
Confidence as well, yes, definitely.
Okay, I think we put that in the parking bay.
Yes.
And what do we have in the Standard?
The Standard is Godot, and it's Godot himself.
My goodness.
That's Godot down there.
Godot is about to set light on. Oh my goodness, Pierre Nkurunziza and his skeletons. And his skeletons include mass murders, dictatorship, stolen elections,
Godot is not kind.
Killer, suppression, mass murderer. And the thing there is, the caption there is Pierre Nkurunziza 1964 to 2020.
And it says what there?
Says rust in pieces.
Rust in pieces. Let me tell you guys, Godot wants to be person non grata across East Africa. He's been quiet for, I think, almost 2 months.
Yeah.
And he comes back on Monday with a cartoon about Magufuli. But then here he comes on Wednesday with this one about Nkurunziza. That one.
You know, if there's a man, now we're getting an East African passport, correct? The only East African passport this man will be allowed to go to is Kenya.
And even then, you don't.
Exactly, questionable.
Anyway, let's move on to the Star.
Yeah. What a cartoon. It is a caricature of Anne Waiguru, still governor of Kirinyaga, and she seems very, very soft, and I don't know what she's saying there. And next to her is a guillotine, and on the guillotine is a pillow with so many colors that I believe are party colors. The Kano Jubilee wiper, and on top of the pillow is a razor blade. I think to depict the guillotine itself. Yeah. And the caption there is "soft spot for the soft spoken."
Yes.
Yeah, maybe she's changing her tune. I don't know.
Do you think
she's pleading with the party, save me, save me?
Do you think Governor Anne Waiguru could be ever be soft spoken? You ever think that will happen?
I'm not gonna say anything.
So whom do we award the wedding cartoon? Any of these inspiring?
I think we tossed this certificate cow story.
I think we
we want to toss.
I want to toss it. That is a nation.
The nation.
Yes.
Fantastic. Yeah. And then we toss
Rest in peace.
Godot. I still want to travel to Burundi, so I will not like it. So I think
exact same here.
We throw.
Yes.
I don't think this cartoon of Anne Waiguru is
it's not making a lot of sense.
And it's also not making sense because she should be between this circle.
But I thought you changed your mind.
No, I haven't.
Toss it
as well.
Toss the damn thing.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And so we have no winning cartoon. And so what is our final thought?
And now, our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled Amazing Grace, William Wilberforce and the Heroic Campaign to End Slavery by Eric Metaxas.
Yes.
What a name.
Yeah, what a name. So again, in continuation of this week's theme, looking at faith and the state. So this book looks at the life and times of William Wilberforce. So I think we all know that there are a handful of names associated with the abolitionist movement across the world. We have Abraham Lincoln, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, but the funny thing is, most of these people were inspired by one man, and that person was William Wilberforce. So Amazing Grace, this book, tells us this story of this remarkable man and his work towards ending the abolitionist movement. So it chronicles his role as a human rights activist, a cultural reformer, and a member of the British Parliament. So the book actually starts with the author making a comparison between a scientist who discovers a vaccination against a terrible disease. So that as the disease is eradicated and it passes out of memory, as well, the scientist's name is forgotten. And he says the same happened with William Wilberforce.
Right.
We live in a time and an age where we can't imagine that the best and brightest of our world would, promote slavery. And this is what seemed to happen to this man. So he was born in 1759 and he became a member of parliament at the age of 21. JM, what were you doing at 21? He was a great guy. So at the time, he was not particularly religious, although he had been exposed to some of the Methodist movements and believing the things that they believed in. So by the mid-1870s, this interest in Christianity had been reawoken. And he began to ask these serious questions about the meaning of life and the meaning of death. And so he was a member of parliament for 45 years. And the results of his efforts are still seen even today. And so the idea of ending slavery at that time was completely out of the question. And Wilberforce and the people who he worked with, they would even get criminally charged if they spoke about abolition in public. And so first of all, they started with this idea of just ending the slave trade, because that was just the buying and selling of human beings. But they never dared speak publicly about the emancipation of slaves. And so he persisted for 20 years despite violent opposition, because slavery was an integral part of the British economy and British culture and understanding. And so he single-handedly, after these 40 long years, paved the way for emancipation of slaves in 1833. And I think from reading this book, there are 3 lessons that we can take from this great Christian man. And the first is the value of persistence. So he fought for years and years before seeing any measurable success. And And his battle showed that you have to continue, you have to persist. Because had he not done that one, taken that one step, thousands, if not hundreds of lives would, have been continued to be taken away.
Yeah.
The second is that there is hope, despite the most evils of evils in our society.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time when very few people could have imagined that slavery would ever end.
Yeah.
Yet, surprisingly, in just one lifetime, he was able to change the way the world viewed slavery.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the third is the value of incremental change.
Yeah.
He was so willing to accept incremental changes, as they happened very slowly. At one point, he supported a bill that would regulate the number of slaves that were permitted to be transported on a ship. This may seem counterintuitive, but because of this bill, it was it was illegal to then support the continuance of slavery being moved from country to country. The second thing was that he required plantation owners to register all of their slaves. What this did is that it kept plantation owners from buying new slaves, but also stopped them from buying illegal slaves. So for him, improvements were proof that what he was doing step by step was actually working. Incremental changes led to greater and more profound changes.
Yeah.
I think this man is incredible.
Very nice way to sum it up.
Yeah.
Something else I'll talk about, something you mentioned, single-handedly.
Yes.
The power of this man, incredible. But Tuem, tell us about the Zong incident.
No, there's this thing they call the Zong incident. But I'll not tell you what the Zong incident did to mitigate the ending of slavery or the abolition movement. But I'll tell you about the Zong incident and the commoditization of Africans and black people. And there's a story behind this. See, on September 6th, 1781, a slave ship called Zong set sail from the West African coast to Jamaica. It was carrying about 240 somethings, I can't remember the slaves, about 200 and something slaves. Now, in charge was a guy called Captain Luke Collingwood.
Yeah.
This guy was the sickest man of earth, scum of the earth completely. See, Collingwood knew that any slave who died naturally brought no money. Any slave who was killed in an insurrection brought no money. Now, you'd think that this guy would take care of his slaves until they reached their destination, correct?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You should.
Wrong. This guy was sick. You see, this guy knew that if a slave died in what was called the peril of the sea, which meant that something beyond the captain's control, they would be insured as a slave ship.
My goodness.
Now, Collingwood also knew that maritime law allowed a captain to offload some of his cargo if he felt it was necessary to save the remainder of his cargo. Now, cargo here are human beings.
How?
Africans, cargo. Right? Now, let me see what this guy did. So this chap comes up with a plan to throw overboard all the sick passengers aboard the Zong. Now, each slave at this time cost about 30 sterling pounds, which today is about $4,000. $4,000 is 400,000 Kenya shillings for a human being.
Yeah.
Imagine it. Now, this guy threw overboard 131 slaves.
My goodness.
Wow.
And some of them were sick, some of them were not so sick, but he threw 131 slaves overboard.
So now you're going to tell us how much this man made.
Yes, and he did this in 3 days. Anyway, 4 months later, the ship arrived in Jamaica, and Collingwood was paid for the unfortunate loss of his cargo. Now, this, if you do the money, that's about $4,000 for 131,000. If you are to accommodate inflation, that is times 133, which is about 500,000 US dollars, which is about 53 to 55 million shillings, Kenya shillings today.
My goodness.
That he got from insurance?
Yes, he was actually paid for the black people he threw overboard. And because of the maritime law, and because it was up to him to do it, and there's a way he featured within the law, he got that kind of payout. But my point here is this. We are saying this now about what happened in 1781.
Yeah.
But do you know slavery still happens today?
Yeah.
Even in this country.
Yeah.
You can find a plane full of young girls from where, Banana, Kikuyu, name them. And they're all going to Saudi Arabia, Jordan, name these countries, Arabian countries. And the Kenyan government actually gives these people licenses to go and work there, or they use the agencies to go and work there.
Not knowing.
Not knowing. Their passports are taken by their employers, and these people work sometimes even without pay, and they are lashed and they are beaten. All right, this
horrific.
happens today.
Yeah.
It still happens today. You know, if I was government right now, I would actually have a threshold, create a law, policy, create a law that says that there's a threshold of people going, there's a threshold of jobs. If you're going to go and do this job in our country, we will not allow you to leave. You can go do your engineering, you can go do whatever, but you cannot allow yourselves to be treated by, and these Arabian countries have embassies in this country, and they allow this to, and government allows this happen to. It's really terrible.
Terrible. So read up more about the Zong incident. But it was one of those in history, I think, that catalyzed and that got triggered a lot of annoyance on the part of the British public towards the slave trade. I don't know where to begin. I think let me begin by saying, first of all, regarding Wilberforce, I always thought it was part of a black community.
Oh wow!
So I was surprised to find out, oh, this was actually a British man, a white man, who contributed so much to the abolishment of slavery. And I don't think there's a man who single-handedly influenced a change in the mindset of the British nation during the 18th and 19th centuries as much as William Wilberforce did. He appears to have been a righteous man of high moral standing when I read this book. And in addition to combating slavery, William Wilberforce also persuaded Britain that its colonial administration had to become a little bit more humane of the natives that it governed over. And so in the year 1813, the British East India Company, which then had a mandate to govern some parts of India, sought a 20-year renewal for their license from Parliament, and he took that opportunity up to lobby for certain changes that he wanted. And so let me just give you some background here. For many years, and with the blessing of the British Crown, the author says the British East India Company was making a handsome profit for itself and for its shareholders from the country. They were extracting minerals and whatever other economic activity that they partook in. But it did mostly as it pleased. And it basically treated the native population with contempt, with indifference, but it also turned a blind eye to some of the inhumane practices of Indian and Hindu customs. And these were of particular grievance and annoyance to William Wilberforce. And he mentioned a few. Here are 6 shocking customs which were prevalent at the time. It was legal to keep young girls as sex slaves and mistresses. He says widows were expected to kill themselves in the sati ritual once their husbands died. We spoke about that yesterday. The elderly in society could be branded useless after a certain age and be killed. The sick were also considered a burden in society, so it was also legal to kill them. It was routine to make human sacrifices to Hindu gods. And then there was the caste system, which he says was institutional slavery and discrimination according to race and class. And so for about 40 years, the British East India Company had been privy to all this, but they were content with that status quo. And in fact, they even benefited from some of those traditions. But Wilberforce saw Christianity as the cure to that deeply racist, superstitious and sexist culture. And so he got the British Parliament to make Christianity legal in India. For a long time, missionaries had not been permitted to go to India alongside the British East India Company. You couldn't preach about the good news of God. And so he succeeded in lobbying Parliament to make those changes. But one parliamentarian cynically observed, the passage of that bill marked the change from looting to paternalism. And we may even say both looting and paternalism. So they had this paternalistic vision of themselves, which they now legalized in addition to the looting. And so as the extraction continued, missionaries were then sent out on a civilizing mission. Eventually some of those practices like that, the burning of the widows, that was outlawed after a certain while. But most surprisingly and finally, the author reflects and he says that Wilberforce even changed the mindset of the British political class. And he says even the political class was changed for the better as a result of his interventions. He notes that prior to 1813, a seat in Parliament had been a place from which one unashamedly sought their own advancement, but now it began to be thought of as a position from which one might help the poor or the nation as a whole.
I need every Kenyan to hear that.
Yeah. Kenyans need to hear that, you know, that the leaders need to be ready to serve them. And the author also said when Wilberforce was getting into Parliament, there were only 3 people who could actually call themselves Christians. But by the time Wilberforce left after the 45 years, he had influenced so many people in the correct way that there were about 200 serious Christians in Parliament who, you know, then carried on that agenda. So when I read this book, my faith in humanity was restored. that there are people who can make a positive contribution to how people think. Yes, so on a day that we had a winning headline from the Daily, a winning headline from the Standard and no winning cartoon. I will ask you not to forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on your TV screens. Find us on Pang, Free to Air, Go TV and Star Times. Have a good evening.